Hi, and welcome to Tech Talks, the People and Planet podcast. On this episode, I'm joined by Julianna Oláh, co-founder and CTO at mental health platform Psyrin. Julianna, hi, how are you?
Hi, thank you. I'm doing great after a hectic day.
Good to have you here. Thank you for joining us. I think, like the first of all, if you give our listeners an overview of Psyrin, what the problem is that you're solving with the mission, and perhaps what's inspired that as well.
Okay, of course. So Psyrin is deep mental health tech company, and what we do is doing the assessment of several mental disorders with speech and AI, and we want to scale it up and make the assessment objective, quicker, and actually more accurate and meaningful for clinicians and also for the patients themselves. So what several mental disorders mean? You might heard about psychotic disorders like schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. These are the ones that usually counting as the more severe psychiatric disorders, and we also deal with severe depression. The common factor behind it that all of them require clinical care, so you cannot really treat these disorders via digital treatment or simply just, for example, outpatient care, but you have to somehow have some clinical involvement. And which inspired the mission is a bit personal. So, for example, I mentioned the psychotic disorders, and one of the most common psychotic disorders is schizophrenia. And for example, I have I personally don't have the experience living with that, but my first kind of long-term boyfriend, first love, was get schizophrenia when I was really young, and also he was really young. And then it was really devastating experience because it broke the relationship and you felt that someone's personality changed a lot. So it remained with me as an experience, and later I started studying clinical psychology, and then I just realized exactly what happened. But that time, no me, nor he, nor his family knew what's happening. And then later I started learning about these disorders and what the development of it, and like everything just fitted into the great picture that that's the case. Usually you get misdiagnosed, you wait years for diagnosis, and you wait other years for treatment, and in the meantime your life just falling apart. And also I'm working with speech and mental health assessment with my PhD that I'm doing, and that was also kind of technological background. And with my two co-founders, they are also in the mental health space. Ed, who is the CEO, is doing research in genetics and mental health. So he knew that it's a problem, and he knew that he wanted to do a company in mental health, and the one that is actually medically and scientifically backed. So something that can work as a medical product, not in the wellness space. Okay. And the third co-founder also has many experience with people with schizophrenia because he's a doctor and worked with people like that in psychiatric care, and it just kind of inspired us to work on this.
Well, that's interesting. So you're the CTO. Are you from?
Yeah.
Obviously, you're from a technical background. Tell us a little bit. I mean, look, there's a lot of technical people that listen to this show, from the UK where we're based, but also Europe and the States as well. So I think those people in particular would really like to learn more about how the tech works, what's driving it, and perhaps how it's different maybe to some of the other mental health platforms that are out there on the market at the moment.
Yeah, of course. So I think in terms of application, we do assessment for clinical care. So we are selling to clinics. So it's a B2B business. It's not like, for example, Calm or Headspace. That's a treatment on your phone. And we work with assessment and we work with prediction. So what we aim to do is predict that you will have a disorder 2 years later, and now you are at a vulnerable stage. Or if you already had the disorder, predict that you will relapse in a given 2 weeks or 1 month. And actually the platform on its own, I think, is not super interesting. So if you have created a software, it's a classic software which has user interfaces from the point of the users, who are most clinicians and patients, and it has a backend, which is maybe a little bit more interesting because that's when the AI part comes in. Yeah. So what we are doing is we developed the proprietary and patented task like field of tasks that the patients just complete, and via this they record their speech, plus they answer a few questions, and this information then go into a machine learning pipeline. And I cannot share all of the information, of course, but basically what we do that we make a transcription of this text, and we use NLP on the transcription itself. We have different methods, so we try to look at different levels of the language, like we do analysis with the syntactics, we do something with level of semantics, and also we analyze the acoustic features. So we take the raw audio, and there is this kind of other feature extraction part when we analyze the acoustic parameters, especially the ones that are related to emotional information.
Okay.
And then later on, all of these features and going into machine learning algorithm that we trained our previous data, now we fine-tune our more and more data that makes predictions. We have models that classify people into categories of like different disorders or different risk state. And we also have regression models which just predict continuous outcomes, for example, symptom scores. And then it goes back to the clinician dashboard and signal that this person is at risk or this person requires serious attention. And we also get some feedback to the patients themselves, like please call your doctor, or like you are just fine tested. But we try to keep all of the more meaningful and diagnostically meaningful information for the clinicians, because we believe that it's a much better way to handle this information, because maybe patients don't have the education or the background enough to put it into context.
Interesting. Super interesting. So you guys are about a year in.
Yeah.
You know, what's been going on in that year? I mean, it's never plain sailing with a startup, right? And of course, you're still studying for your PhD as well. What's been the challenges that you faced? How have you overcome them? What's been the big takeaways that you've had from your first year as a startup founder?
I think the beginning is I think the most difficult part is finding a focus. What will be your focus? I think I was personally really lucky with the team. So the co-founding team is, we joined really early on, 1.5 years ago, and I think it was a really good match. And now we also have a lead developer. So it's also kind of big hub that now I think the team on its own is kind of strong, and we have a great culture. Which was more challenging is just like figuring out exactly how we would like to monetize our technology, because we knew that we want to do something that using clinical care, right? But like the clinical care pathways, both in the UK and in the US, are really complex. So it took around a half year just to map out how the actual care delivery works there, and what are the points when we can sell our products and what can be the potential for a customer. Then we also had to make some decisions, like what are the different, like from different type of strategic routes, what are the ones that we want to actually choose and be dedicated to going on. We also had a study which was a proof of concept study, and we collected speech for more than 1,100 individuals, which means that we have one of the biggest data set in house and speech. So it was a big effort to collect all of this data, and we collected all of this data online because we actually want to enable remote assessment. So that's some core feature of our product, and it was just collecting the data was on its own interesting and challenging, but also for me then working with all of this data in and seeing how the model classifies between different disorders, different levels of symptom severity is exciting. And that actually it was a question like, can we capture enough information from this little bit low quality speech, because it's really different from a laboratory setting. But that was a technical risk that we took. And then when I figured out that, oh yeah, I can do it, like we can do it, it was a big win. And now we are raising, so it's a challenge too. But to be fair, it's not really, I enjoy the raising part much more than my CEO, because I'm just going to meeting and then answering some questions while he has to take all the proactivity. So I think finding focus, collecting data, that were the more interesting, and just being optimistic against all of the risks.
You mentioned culture before as well. How would you describe the culture of the business?
I think we are really achievement oriented. So And the other thing is, I think we are really empirically and data driven, given the fact that me and Dad are doing a PhD. So we are having strong science background, plus the medical co-founder is also really empirically driven. So we try to test all of the assumptions that we make. And the other thing is, I think they really care about each other.
Yeah.
I also think it's an emotional culture in a way that we buy specific gift for example, birthdays. We go out
Nice.
often. We check on each other. We try to take care of each other's soul also a little bit. It's important to keep motivated, and I think one of the biggest kind of motivation for at least me is that actually the team and the emotions and the love that I feel for them. So I want these people to be successful, not just me being successful. And I think it also can drive to put you this kind of extra bit of work and go for this extra mile because I think maybe you wouldn't do it for yourself, but you do it for your team that you are committed to. So I think we are really kind of a strong community driven and really mission driven too. So for us, it's important to have something that really make an impact in care delivery and actually disrupt the current care system. And I think we already somehow paid some cost of it. Like, for example, when deciding between different strategies, that's a strategy that means that, for example, you have to be committed to sell there, which means that you can only sell later, for example, to pharma, which is a mission-driven approach that, we want to prioritize it. Maybe VCs and investors would prefer if we prioritize the other one, but we as a team, we want to go on this route and make our own priorities first, and then figuring out how to commercialize them, not in the other way around.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks for that. So what's next for Psyrin then? Anything exciting that you can share with us?
So we are officially raising. Now we are raising in the, it's a seed round. We are raising in the UK now and in Europe, and we are going for pitches and meetings in September to the US. So it's super exciting. Also means that if we are successful, we might hire someone in January. So 1-2 people, one must be technical. So if someone is really, I don't know, interested in joining to a startup like us, then send us emails around that time. And it also means that we have collaborations with 2 clinics in Massachusetts and also 4 clinics in the UK who are collaborative partners to start studies. And we will kick off these studies in December and January too, which is super exciting because it means that we will start one of the biggest studies in psychotic disorders that happened in the last 20 years in whole academic research. So I think it will be really a big kind of outstanding achievement. These are the news.
Nice. So fingers crossed then. So when do you think that you might close the funding round?
We aim to close by the beginning of December.
Yeah, it's always like kind of how no one knows when that's going to happen, do they? But
yes,
it'd be nice for you to do it by the end of this year.
Yes.
Cool. So last question then, Julianna. And it's quite a big one. I think I like to ask these kind of thought-provoking questions at the end. What's your overall thoughts on the situation with artificial intelligence in mental health versus human interaction? What can the machine do that the human cannot, and vice versa?
I think that there is definitely room for artificial intelligence in this, in general, in mental health. I think the adoption is really slow compared to how quick it could be technologically. So I see the trend that the technology is ready, or the challenges are not really technological challenges, but more cultural challenges and adoption challenges, because psychiatry and psychology are really open-minded people, but really traditional field, who really value human interaction and maybe a little bit scared of technology, and they not really understand technology in most cases based on the background. So that's something that is a big kind of bottleneck in the system. I think, but humans can only do is some part of therapy. I'm not saying that all of the therapy has to be delivered by humans, but I think with psychological therapy, there is an important element of it when you just create an attachment to a human, and this attachment to the psychologist or therapist supposed to be a better type of attachment that, for example, you had in your childhood. And I think it's really unhealthy if we try to replace it with machines. So I think this element maybe cannot be replaced. However, other things like finding biomarkers, finding, for example, targets for different type of drug trials, analyzing the changes in the brain that's happening with different conditions, then you can use AI for all of it. You can, of course, search for digital biomarkers. And with digital biomarkers, you can actually collect a huge amount of data, which AI can analyze better than humans. So, for example, what we do with speech, we're searching for small, subtle changes that the humans cannot detect, or can only detect after big training. So that's something that you can do. And I think just simply applying more statistical models into psychiatry and mental health would be an important cultural change, because now all of the assessment diagnostic criteria are really subjective based on interviews, and I think it has its own benefit, but it makes the whole field a little bit unreliable and actually difficult to move forward. I think just the cultural adaptation that there are structured, systematic way of assessment. Maybe it's a little bit biased, but at least systematic. That would be a big kind of development, because then all of the phenotypes that you create will be more meaningful and more well defined. So these are the parts that I think AI have a big role to play. That's my bet.
Julianna, thank you so much for joining us. Guys, this has been Julianna Oláh from health tech platform Psyrin. Thanks again, Julianna. Speak to you soon.
Thank you.